The EOS 90D and the Canon M6 Mark II, both of these are recent updates to long-standing series of cameras from the venerable DSLR standard bearer, Canon. They both have pretty similar video specs and identical sensors. However, one is a gigantic DSLR and the other is a much smaller package that decided to shake itself free of the shackles of mirrors and is in fact mirrorless. Fancy that. Now, there are subtle differences between the two, however, which begs the question, should you get the Canon 90D or the Canon M6 Mark II for online video work? Let's find out. What's up, everyone? I'm the Everyday Dad, and if I can figure it out, you can figure it out. Whew. My shoulder hurts, but we've spent the previous 2 weeks talking about the 90D, and seriously, I'm shocked at how much I like it. Now, I've never been that big of a fan of DSLRs, and I've never actually owned one myself, so the 90D really made me question my mirrorless loyalties, because I've got a mirrorless camera, another mirrorless camera that's packed up, mirrorless camera over here, and there's another mirrorless camera somewhere around there too. And so I'm very much in the mirrorless camp because the M6 Mark II is basically the same internals as the 90D, but cheaper, smaller, and has some pretty neat features for a little camera that you won't find anywhere else. But before we hop too far into the comparisons, however, I would like to thank my friends over at B&H Photo for loaning me both the 90D and the M6 Mark II to make this series of videos. Now, if you'd like to get your very own, there will be links in the description below. Now, like I said in the beginning, these two cameras basically share all of the same internals, but they do have separate mounts and a few other differences, mainly design philosophy, and that might sway you one way or the other. And there is no better way to see how this plays out than to stack these two up against each other in the three main categories that I compare all cameras against and see which one is worth that precious dough. And you know what? Let's throw these up on the sticks to be the B and the C cam for the rest of the video. There we go. We are now on the 90D with the 50mm 1.8 and the M6 Mark II with the M mount 22mm f2. So it's not a 100% comparison. It's just a neat way to show you that both of these cameras could be used for making indoor online content, no problem. Now, both the 90D and the M6 Mark II share the same 32 megapixel APS-C size sensor. Now, this is a Canon APS-C, so instead of a 1.5 times crop, you'll get a 1.6 because it's just a teeny bit smaller. And when I say crop, really quickly, it's been brought to my attention that sometimes the camera videos are too technical. When I say crop, that just means that whatever your focal length of your lens, you have to multiply that by 1.6 to get the equivalent field of view compared to full frame. They both can record in up to 4K 30 frames per second and 1080p in 120 frames per second. And since they are Canon cameras, following the very bizarre design philosophy that Canon's decided to implement this year, neither can do 4K in 24 frames per second, nor can either do 1080p in 24 frames per second. You should all just switch to 30. Now, I record in 30, so whoo! We made it thus far. But a shared benefit is neither ends up having an additional crop on their 4K, so you'll get less of a crop here with these two lower end cameras than with the EOS R, which is Canon's current flagship mirrorless camera. Think about that. Now, for autofocus in all video recording modes, you get access to the ever popular dual pixel autofocus, which is, honestly, it's great. As you've heard over the past few weeks, and as you can see right now, it's really just nice to have a camera that you can trust for focusing. I just put these both on iDetect autofocus and just turned them on. I didn't have to mess with it at all after that, and it just works so much better. Now, yes, you can absolutely get any camera to focus, even manually, which both do have focus peaking if you're into that sort of thing. But who has time for that? I mean, not me, that's who. I'm a huge advocate and a fan of good continuous video autofocus. Like right now, the main camera is the GH5, and I have to use this app to make sure that I'm in focus because I have it set to manual because the GH5 has very bad continuous video autofocus. So having good video autofocus, so useful. And the last spec-ish feature that I want to talk about is neither of these cameras has in-body image stabilization. Both have fixed sensors, but they do have electronic image stabilization, which works, it works pretty well. It's not perfect, but it is better than nothing. When it comes to straight up image quality, they both look basically identical. Again, they have the same sensor and the same image processor. The real difference image quality wise is gonna come from the lenses you use. And like we said, they do use a different lens mount. The 90D has Canon's EF mount, while the M6 Mark II has Canon's EFM mount, and we'll talk much more about this later in the ecosystem section here in a little bit, but the EFM glass just isn't there. I mean, there are a few notable pieces like this 22mm and the 35mm 1.4, but everything else is kind of meh. The dynamic range on these cameras is better than their previous attempts, but it's still nothing approaching any of the other major manufacturers. Plus, there is no included log profile here. Besides that, I do think both cameras look perfectly fine if you're going to use these to create online content. Neither really has the advantage, except again, we'll talk about the lenses. The image quality is fine. Like, image quality in cameras these days is really, really good. So I would never necessarily worry about the technical image quality of a camera, because that's only part of the video file. Audio is pretty much king nowadays. I mean, heck, even myself, even me, a YouTube content creator, I don't watch most of the YouTube videos that I consume anymore. I listen to them as I'm doing other things. So your audio is so much more important now than anything relating to actual image quality. I'm sorry to say that, but it is. And here again, both cameras are pretty evenly matched. They both have a 3.5mm audio in jack, and both have decent internal preamps. Again, much like I recommend on every camera, you should lower these internal settings to as low as possible and let your microphone do the heavy lifting if able. No consumer level camera actually has that good of preamps, but these are perfectly fine. Now, the advantage in the audio department does go to the 90D, because not only does it have a microphone in port, but it also has a headphone out jack. So if you are behind the camera, you can use the 90D and like listen to your audio in real time instead of just trusting like the little display that I see on top of the camera right there. Now that little display works fine. It's always more beneficial to actually hear what's going on instead of just like guessing from across the room at a little screen. Now, video quality, yeah, it's important as far as cameras go, I guess. I mean, when you are looking at a camera, it's the one thing that the specs will sell you on, you know, 6K this, autofocus that, more megapixels, whatever. What really matters when creating online content is ease of workflow, and an easy to use camera is par excellence. Yes, I did look up a fancy way to say that. Now, this is where these two cameras are really, they kind of diverge here in the ease of use department. Now, a DSLR and a mirrorless camera, they have structural differences. The M6 Mark II has access to an additional electronic viewfinder that you can plug into the top that will let you see what the camera sees when you use it. The 90D has an optical viewfinder that, it works for photographers, I guess. The 90D needs to be put into live view mode to use the back screen and to start the video recording process, where the M6 is basically in live view mode all the time, basically. You might think as a primary mirrorless user that I'd go with the M6 for ease of use, but the 90D is hands down one of the best usable camera bodies I've ever come across. I mean, it's almost perfectly laid out with dial, button, joysticks galore. I mean, it really makes using the camera a dream. Now, I don't want to oversell this. I really don't, but the 90D has been my favorite camera to use so far this year. It's so good that when I'm walking around the house and I'll see it, I'll just pick it up to mess around with the settings. Yes, that makes me sound crazy. The M6 isn't terrible, and it also has plenty of buttons and dials. I do like its grip, and it's one of the best feeling grips on a small-bodied camera that I've felt this year. And honestly, that's the one thing Canon has really gotten right so far in 2019. They've been designing their bodies really well. If you remember, I also very much like the G5X Mark II, their point-and-shoot camera. That body was insane. It had an awesome grip for point-and-shoot, and that was a few months ago. But you know what? Let's take these cameras outdoors to put all of this ease of use and video quality theory to work in a quick video/vlogging test. See you out there. Okay, and welcome to the vlogging test between the Canon 90D and the Canon M6 Mark II. Now, I do have these both set to the exact same settings, which makes me kind of curious why the 90D looks a little more overexposed. Now, that could just be the screen, but I have them both set to auto ISO. They're set to 18mm and they're set to 3.5. So everything is the exact same across both cameras. And I will say, when we talk about this from an ease of use perspective, and ooh, there's the sun. How's the dynamic range? Ooh, not good on either of these. But when we talk about an ease of use, like as an easy to use camera after you hit record, I am gonna give it to the 90D. That flip out screen is much easier to use. Like right now, if I wanted to change a setting, it'd be very easy to tap the screen to get through what I wanted or to change the setting that I would want. On here, while yes, technically I can still do the same thing, but I'd have to like reach up and then tap the screen, and I've been having problems with like, as I go to change the settings from in front of the camera, it like messes up the screen or it taps to focus somewhere else. So I do still think the flip out screen is the much more easier option to use. But image quality wise, this is with the kit lenses on both cameras, so it should be very, very similar. The electronic image stabilization is turned on, and we've got image stabilization built into the lens. Now I am doing the audio through the 90D just because, like I said, it's got the flip out screen. It's so much easier to do a microphone with a flip out screen than a flip up screen. But it's not insurmountable. You've seen me use my A6400 in this roughly the same way for the last few months, so it's not that big of a deal. But if I have the option, I'm gonna take that option. But yeah, let me know what you guys think. Which one looks better? Which one looks better? I will say the 90D is so much heavier. Like, it's great when you're just holding the camera by itself, but when you've got it on a tripod with a microphone, it's much heavier. And my shoulder, it's not what it used to be. I'm turning into an old man. Okay, back to the video. Oh, my wrist. Too much for my wrist. Yeah, I mean, come on. Both are incredibly easy to use. I mean, heck, they are Canon cameras, and that continues to be the one Canon claim to fame, but I have got to give it to the 90D. Unless you are getting old like me and you need a lighter rig because your shoulders, you know, your connective tissue just isn't holding up as well as it used to be, you might need a smaller camera. So let's say you decide to purchase one of these cameras. Using those incredibly convenient affiliate links in the description below, what does the upgrade path look like? Like we mentioned in the beginning of the video, the big image quality difference will come from the lenses. The EFM lenses, they just aren't that good. Now you can use an EFM to EF adapter, or you could even get a speed booster that will give you almost full frame capabilities out of this tiny body. And honestly, that's the way that I'd go. Now, there was news that Sigma would be releasing their cropped 16-30 and 56mm lenses on the EFM mount, and when that happens, the M6 Mark II will be a beast of a system. But as of the recording of this video, that hasn't happened yet. When it does though, the 90D can use any of the EF or EFS glass natively. And that basically means all of Canon's EOS lenses. And it is much easier to use lenses natively than needing to adapt them, because in my mind, every extra piece of glass or metal is another potential point of failure and could ruin a shoot. The 90D though, really quickly, also has a better battery and HDMI connection, making it basically one of the perfect streaming cameras out there. The M6 does have a clean 4K and 1080p image out, but it has the far less useful micro HDMI connection. I thought we talked about this, brands. No more micro HDMI, only mini. What it all boils down to is ecosystem wise, today, I think the 90D is the better option. But when those Sigma lenses come out, the M6 will absolutely be king. The M6, when those Sigma lenses come out, the M6 will be a king camera. But at the end of the day, so what, right? Canon versus Canon, which one comes out on top? Well, I mean, honestly, I'm split here. I started out thinking I'd easily take this to the 90D. I mean, like I've said, it's really impressed the heck out of me. I've enjoyed using it so much. But the more I think about it, DSLRs, no matter how well they are built, how easy they are to use, how good the video looks, I mean, they are just the way out, and they're going to be less versatile. You can get the same image quality, but you can adapt more and use the M6 in more ways than the 90D can be used. Even though today, like I said, the 90D is the more useful camera. Between the two though, I'd have to give it to the M6 Mark II. It's a little cheaper, but with the same image quality, I mean, it's definitely the one I'd recommend. You can turn this into a better video package in total than the 90D. Thanks for watching.